I'm Linda Fox. I'm in the Phocuswire studio and I'm at Phocuswright Europe. I am joined by Björk Bryndísardóttir from Dohop and Jon Owen from GoCity. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're here to talk about turbulent times, and we're certainly in those. The way I'm sort of presenting it is there's a bit of a quadruple whammy right now. We've got the political side, we've got the economic side, we've got global conflict, and we've got climate change. So what are you both seeing out in the market? What are you hearing and what are you seeing across your systems? And you kick off, Linda.
I can kick off. So the first one is, I would say, like on the political landscape. Trump being elected president again, like the uncertainty around the US. We're seeing it, but also hearing it. Less travel. There is uncertainty about travel, transatlantic, but also between Canada and the US. So you can see, and the uncertainty remains really. And this is where a lot of, if, for example, mentioning OTAs make their money, but also the airlines. So yeah.
And you would presumably echo a lot of that sentiment.
Yeah, exactly. I think the travel industry is notorious for facing headwinds that change from time to time. But at the moment, we've got the ones you mentioned. I think probably climate change as a consumer issue is still a hot topic, but probably either baked into the underlying numbers or not affecting behavior any more than it used to. But the other factors we're definitely seeing kind of west coast of the US and some other US cities being affected by a number of different issues, particularly inbound from Canada and from Europe.
How do you then, and you might be able to give us an impression of this on behalf of your partners, you can talk about as an operator, but how do you then, what's your contingency? How quickly can you flip to something, directing customers to something else?
Well, we're reasonably broad-based. So we run passes in 28 cities and it's roughly 50-50 US and Europe. And so Europe's actually having a great year this year. So Paris is comping to the Olympics last year, but other cities are seeing an increase in visitor numbers. So that gives you some balance. I think ultimately what you need to do as a business is just keep giving. You can't affect European reluctance to travel to California at the moment, but what you can do is keep building the right products for customers, and those market trends will change.
And then do you therefore switch, marketing to try and bring in more to the areas that are particularly attractive right now?
You do. I'll let your view in a second. You definitely do. I think we sell a pass to a customer to visit a destination, right? And I think we are not very able to change where that customer actually wants to go. But for the set of customers who are visiting the cities that we operate in, absolutely, we can ramp up marketing if that becomes more popular and, similarly.
What are you seeing the airlines doing?
Well, no, to be honest, so still, it sounds very bleak when we list out these headwinds that we are facing. But if you do look at numbers from IATA, for example, number of passengers are growing year over year, even in the US. Asia is growing quite fast. We're increasing our partnerships in Asia. So you do want to, like you just said, hedge your bets. Make sure that you're operating in each continent. You want to be where the customer is, for sure. The customer is going to travel. They are traveling, even though economic growth has slowed down, demand has maybe slowed down. There's still sustainability is still a topic. Again, it's moving slow, I would say, because of more the supply side than the demand side. But I wouldn't say that, I think the outlook is more bleak than actually the numbers indicate.
Okay.
To build on that, I think it's very easy to talk about Canadian travel to the US down, and it is.
Yeah.
And equally, a lot of Northern Europe, Scandinavia and Germany to US is also down.
Yeah. Correct.
But travel from France, Spain, Italy, those source markets are 20% up year on year. We're seeing UK
to the US
generally.
Okay.
US and to the US is up as well.
Okay.
And UK to the US is okay. It's pretty flat. We're seeing year on year, but it's okay.
So to your point, it's not perhaps as bad as we.
It's not as bad as I thought. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really the headlines. Even when I hear these topics, the first thought is this is we're in a really tough spot. But when I look at the numbers, not only ours but actually the industry, when I look at the load factors, they're going up in all regions, both domestic and international, which is increasing profitability. Fuel prices are going down, which will strengthen the position of the airlines. So, and there is economic growth, inflation is going down. Because of the outlook, we're seeing interest rates come down a little bit slower. So it'd be nice to kind of see those start moving down. But that also, we can factor that into the outlook. So from where I'm standing, I'm yes, these are turbulent times, the outlook isn't necessarily that bad.
I want to ask you, Jon, about booking patterns, windows, those kind of things. Are consumer behaviours actually changing right now?
A little bit, but I agree with your sentiment that probably things are overstated. So from pre-pandemic to post, we definitely saw a period post-pandemic where booking windows shortened because there was a bit of uncertainty about whether things would be locked down.
Yeah, well, we all just went a bit crazy and wanted to get out there. So.
Yes.
And there was nervousness that an outbreak might occur and you wouldn't be able to go, so people were waiting to the last minute. We're pretty much back where we were. So for our product, we're typically bought after the flight and after the hotel, but we're bought about 30 days before the trip. And we're seeing that pretty flat. We're seeing that's a slightly lower number for US domestic, which is a big part of our business, US to US, which is another sector which is doing fine.
Have you had to sort of tamper your projections, either of you? And, I'm sure you can find a way to phrase this in a non-commercially sensitive or commercially non-sensitive way. But have you had to sort of tamper your expectations of the growth in the market that we were predicted to have versus what we are seeing?
Yes, we've probably the biggest factor is we've had to change where our growth is going to come from, and our different cities have different margin structures and different cash flow considerations. So there's a bit of that planning that needs to be done, and in total not that bad, but some changes, like some European destinations up and some US destinations down.
Yeah. Okay. I've had some interviewees in the studio today, and I have to say that broadly speaking, the outlook has been a little bit bleak. That they think it's going to continue the way it is, maybe even exacerbate a little, and that travel gets something thrown at it all of the time.
Yeah.
That's the nature of being in travel, because it's affected by everything. But how do you feel? Glass half empty?
So I don't think it's not obvious why it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
But it's equally not obvious to me that the lost volume this year to some of those destinations will bounce back this time next year.
Okay.
So I think we might stay at this level. It's not obvious that there's going to be a much worse path unless it's economically driven. A US consumer recession would be bad news for travel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that still remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Okay. So jury out on that one. You're out and about, you're at Phocuswright, you're talking to your peers. I mean, how concerned would you say the industry is right now, kind of as an overall barometer?
Quite concerned.
Yeah.
So, and that's like, as I'm saying, maybe we're being too optimistic here, or we're the odd ones out.
Optimism is good because you can talk yourself into optimism, I think.
That's absolutely correct. But no, there is people are talking about headwinds. They're saying it's difficult out there. So yeah, absolutely. So the feeling is that these are tough times. And I think from where I'm sitting, it's really, the uniqueness in it is just the number of events. We had COVID, but then the times after COVID have just been very strange.
Right. Which is what I wanted to ask you both. Does it feel different right now to other times when the industry has been in turbulence?
There's different sorts of things that affect travel, right? So, the reason for me to be concerned would be, I think some of the things that are happening are putting barriers in the way of easy travel. Like the UK's Brexit arrangements are worse.
Okay,
right?
so visas, documentation
German,
things.
I forget the number. I think something like 70% of German households have a passport because you don't need one to travel around Europe. And now you do to the UK. So there's a section of the German market that it's just more hassle to come to the UK than it used to be. And similarly, some of the American administration policies are making immigration to the US a bit more problematic in various ways.
Yeah, and so making people stop and think.
So that sort of stuff
Exactly.
is less slick than it was 8-10 years ago. I think that is a change. I also think that a lot of our businesses drive our sales from Google, and the search environment's changing a lot as well. So you've got a change in customer acquisition and a change in some of the underlying travel fundamentals, which just creates that uncertainty.
Yeah, no, and yet, because I am quite an optimistic person most of the time, and yet you do have. Yes, you have the rapid pace of technological change and the AI and things you can do that, but you also have massive advances going on with digital ID and digital wallets in the background, which will help all of the documentation and passport issues at some point down the line. So I do try and feel that there's cause for optimism.
With the right political will, that's true.
Yeah,
that is true. That is true.
Okay, but overall feeling of concern. What else? Just give me a sentiment for how you think the rest of the year might play out. More of the same, what might improve, what might not. I think it's really hard to do that because the drivers are the kind of, the macro environment is changing a lot as well. So you've got a kind of a changing customer acquisition and a change in some of the underlying travel fundamentals, which just creates that uncertainty.
I think it's really hard to do that because the drivers are the kind of, the macro environment is changing a lot as well. So you've got a kind of a changing customer acquisition and a change in some of the underlying travel fundamentals, which just creates that uncertainty. kind of consumer attitude about travel, which is quite hard to predict, and that will largely be event driven. And it'll be reaction to different, particularly American policies, and no one really knows how that's going to go.
No.
It'll be US consumer economy driven, and economists are split on that. And it'll be about the pace of change in AI search. And again, remains to be seen. Google will experiment. And so all three of that, it's actually quite a hard time to plan.
It is a hard time to predict. Yeah, there's a lot.
And I agree
going
with
on.
you. They're not necessarily all really negative things.
No.
But it's hard to predict them.
Yeah. So if we stand together in the studio in San Diego in November when we have the Phocuswright conference, will we still be talking about these same themes? Do you think?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
I would guess yes as well.
Yeah. So we can have exactly the same conversation.
We can.
In a few months' time.
6 months more data.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we're being asked by our board to sort of have an early view on what 2026 might look like. And it's probably my sort of 8 or 9 years in the industry, it's probably one of the hardest years to do that.
Well, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you, because what we see, because we track a lot of startups, investments and what's going on in that environment, and the funding is at an all-time low. We thought last year the funding was at the all-time low and the deal was at the all-time low. So that naturally then, funnels down or cascades into what the rest of the industry, the sentiment and everything. So, I mean, should we be, I don't know, is there anything that we can do, I guess, right now? Do we just, hold our nerve? I mean, what do, in these times?
I think taking a sort of page out of the sports playbook is you just try and control the controllables. Like you try and make sure that your business is lean and efficient. You try and make sure your product's awesome for customers, and you're like ruthlessly focused on making the product ever better and price competitive and great features. And if you do that, at some point, the travel market will return.
Yeah. And so you just wait it out then?
I think so.
Yeah. But does it mean pressure from your board or pressure from your investors? Because we are seeing a lot of M&A, and that is a natural follow on from the market.
And I would actually, that's what I've been talking to some of my colleagues here. I wouldn't be surprised if we would see more M&As because there is pressure on profitability. And I think to win, like we were talking about hedging your bets, M&A might be the best way to do that.
Yeah. And I think the investors are encouraging some of their portfolio to go down that route.
Yeah.
Because that's how they're going to get scaled.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
John, Linda, great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.